Okay, let's dive into this explainer. Today, we're bringing together two completely different historical figures who, honestly, at first glance, seem like total opposites. On one side, we've got the profound, peaceful teachings of a Tibetan Buddhist monk, the Dalai Lama. And on the exact opposite side, the brilliant, hyper-pragmatic doctrines of the ancient Chinese military strategist Sun Tzu. So what actually happens when you put a master of compassion right next to a master of war? Well, as you'll see, you get an incredibly potent, entirely unexpected toolkit for navigating our crazy, stressful modern world. I want you to take a second and just think about the battles you've fought over the past week or so. Maybe it was a major clash with a difficult boss, right? Or a really frustrating personal setback. Or even just that gnawing internal anxiety that keeps you staring at the ceiling at 2 a.m. When we hit these walls, our first instinct is usually to just push back. We want to fight the world and force our way through. But what if? What if that exact instinct is the very thing that's exhausting you? What if there's actually a more strategic and ultimately much more peaceful way to win? But before we get too deep into the ancient philosophy, let's actually look at the modern science for a second. Because honestly, this isn't just about feeling warm and fuzzy. It's literally about survival. The American Psychological Association has actually found that the act of forgiveness, of truly letting things go, directly improves both our mental and physical health. Think about that. We're establishing a hard scientific baseline right here at the start. Holding on to conflict literally makes us sick. Letting it go, that makes us stronger. So keeping that science in mind, let's look at our first master. The Dalai Lama has a very specific prescription for a world in need, and it boils down to one word: compassion. Now, I know it's super easy to dismiss compassion as just this soft, nice-to-have trait. Like, oh, that's sweet. But the Dalai Lama argues something radical here. He says that true inner strength actually comes from shifting our focus entirely away from our own self-cherishing. Selfishness, ironically enough, absolutely blocks the exact happiness we're desperately trying to find. To really wrap our heads around this, we need to look at a core concept in Buddhism called bodhicitta. And hey, even if you're approaching this from a strictly secular viewpoint, bodhicitta is absolutely fascinating. It roughly translates to an awakened heart. Basically, it's this altruistic aspiration to achieve ultimate realization, not just so you can feel good, but for the sake of all sentient beings. The Dalai Lama points out that generating this kind of good heart ultimately benefits us just as much as it helps everyone else in the long run. It's a massive strategic shift in how we view our entire purpose. I absolutely love this quote from the ancient text, The Way of the Bodhisattva. It goes, "For like the supreme substance of the alchemists, it takes the impure form of human flesh and makes of it the priceless body of a Buddha." Just think about that imagery for a second. Alchemy, is all about turning base lead into pure gold. Well, bodhicitta is about taking our messy, impure, everyday human struggles, our road rage, our petty frustrations, all of it, and literally transmuting them into immense inner strength and wisdom. We aren't just ignoring our struggles, we're actively using them as raw material. So the absolute crucial point here is how we actually go about practicing this compassion. The Dalai Lama makes a very sharp, very important distinction. True compassion is possible without attachment. You see, usually what you and I call love or concern is heavily mixed up with our own emotional needs. We project our desires onto someone else, and then, bam, when they don't act exactly how we want them to, that love sours into anger. Genuine compassion, though, it's based entirely on the needs of the other person. It is completely independent of our own emotional baggage or expectations. It stays rock solid even if the other person is acting out. Think about it this way. When we hold on to a really strong sense of self, when we just take our own self-interest way too seriously, the absolute tiniest, most petty things provoke deep hurt. Somebody cuts us off in traffic, and suddenly our whole identity feels threatened. We get furious. But when you adopt an altruistic approach, you start building this unshakable foundation of inner peace. You just become relaxed. You stop getting provoked by every little thing. Because, well, your ego isn't constantly on the line, waiting to be defended. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how perfectly Sun Tzu's philosophy mirrors the monk, even though it comes from a completely wildly different world. We're pivoting over to Sun Tzu and his legendary art of war. We usually think of this book as a bloody manual for combat, but honestly, it's really a masterclass in strategic restraint. He says, to subdue the enemy without fighting is the acme of skill. Our ego, it always wants to win the shouting match. Wisdom, however, just wants peace. Sun Tzu breaks this down into incredibly actionable tactics that you can use in your daily life. First up, walk around the fight. you really don't have to respond to every single insult thrown your way. Second, pick your battles. Showing restraint is often the absolute most powerful move you can make. Third, adapt to resistance. If a path is blocked, don't just endlessly ram your head against the brick wall. And fourth, wait for the right opening. Timing is everything. Avoiding those unnecessary arguments is always going to be wiser than just relying on brute force.
Okay, so this next quote often gets totally misunderstood. All warfare is based on deception. In the context of our daily lives, deception doesn't mean being a compulsive liar or being fake. Not at all. It means being highly strategic with your energy. It means appearing weak when you're actually strong. You don't need to broadcast your intelligence, your bank account, or your skills to every single person in the room. Keep your cards close to your chest. Let your results do the talking. Insecurity is incredibly loud, but real confidence, that's quiet. Let people underestimate you, it literally gives you an incredible edge.
And that brings us to Sun Tzu's most famous metaphor, one that was famously echoed by Bruce Lee much later on. He advises us to be formless, shapeless, like water. Think about it. Water never resists a giant boulder sitting in a stream. It just naturally flows right around it and keeps on moving forward. In life, we are going to face endless resistance, right? Rejections, major setbacks, incredibly difficult people. If you're rigid, you're going to snap. But if you're flexible like water, you change the plan, not the goal. You adapt, and ultimately, you win.
But listen, being like water definitely doesn't mean being passive. Sun Tzu teaches us this really crucial lesson on momentum. Opportunities multiply as they are seized. We suffer from this massive modern epidemic of waiting around for the absolute perfect plan before we do anything. But action is what creates movement. You don't need to see the entire map to take that first step. You just need to act. Seize that tiny opportunity right in front of you, and then just adjust your strategy as new doors inevitably begin to open.
And this brilliantly illustrates our ultimate connection. We've got two masters from two totally different realms, but notice how beautifully their philosophies actually align. Sun Tzu says the absolute most important rule of strategy is to know yourself. To take a brutally honest inventory of your own weaknesses, your deepest fears, and your patterns. On the flip side, the Dalai Lama's core mandate is to shed self-centeredness, to stop letting your ego entirely dictate your emotional reactions. The strategist's rigorous self-awareness perfectly mirrors the monk's shedding of the ego. It's the exact same concept. Both the monk and the general lead us right to the exact same profound conclusion. The ultimate enemy within is the ego. Before you make a single external move, before you engage in any kind of conflict at the office or within your relationships, the real war is always internal. You are fighting your own impatience, your own quick anger, your own selfishness. Once you actually win that internal fight, the rest of the world becomes infinitely easier to navigate.
So we're going to leave you with this final thought. Will you spend your limited, incredibly precious energy constantly fighting the world, just reacting to every single slight? Or will you do the hard, quiet work of mastering yourself? Whether you choose the path of the Dalai Lama's boundless compassion or Sun Tzu's strategic restraint, ultimate victory never, ever comes from dominating others. It comes entirely from mastering the space within. Really think on that the next time you find yourself gearing up for a battle.